If you've never heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast, and I'll explain really quickly. My favorite part, it's free. There's actually creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer if you want. It will actually distribute your podcast so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple, and many more, and you can actually make money from it without any minimum numbers of listeners, and it's everything that you need to actually make a podcast in one place. So do this, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hey everyone, I hope you're having an awesome day. Super excited about this episode with TShane Johnson. Man, this guy has had a journey. So let's get right into it. I hope you enjoy it, and I will chat with you right after. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Blaze Your Own Trail podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Mendoza, and today I have TShane Johnson on the show, and I'm going to give him a minute just to give us a little intro about who he is and what he does.
All right. Well, first and foremost, thanks for having me on the show. Super excited about it. I always love the opportunity to be able to share a message of extreme adversity to allow other people to know that no matter what, no matter how tough it gets, that there is opportunity out of that adversity. So I'm TShane Johnson, professional speaker, motivational speaker, author, first and foremost, father of a beautiful little girl. I do a multitude of things between starting businesses, executive leadership coaching, keynote speeches, developing relationships with customers and sales teams, you name it. Right now I'm building a mortgage company, a startup for about 1.5 years that I'm helping consult with. So a little bit of everything, but first and foremost, I think I'm a dad, which is the most important.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so on this show, what I like to do is rewind a little bit and, give the audience some context around your journey and how you were as a kid, and then we'll kind of get back to today. So growing up, so where are you from originally? Like where you say you were born and raised, or, there's a lot of people I talk to where they actually traveled a bunch growing up. So what was your childhood like?
Actually, I grew up in a very small town in Arcadia, Florida native, one of the few and far between. Florida is predominantly known for its beaches and vacation homing, but really I think it's the largest producer of cattle in the entire United States of America. So it's cattle in Orange Grove. My father was a correctional officer, retired over 40 years, single dad. My mom left when we were probably about 9 years old. So it was my father, my younger brother, who is blind and mentally handicapped, my other younger brother, and my sister. We grew up probably about 12 miles outside of town. We used to have to probably walk between 3 and 4 miles a day through our grandfather's ranch just to get to the bus stop. So small country town. Grew up there, and if we weren't going to school, we were working cows or building fence or doing something to make extra money to make ends meet.
Awesome. So it was definitely a family affair on the farm, right? So everybody worked together. So what were some lessons that as a kid that you learned that you think have really translated into who you are today?
That's a great question. I talk quite a bit about the place that I grew up and kind of the experiences I went through with my dad and how that was. And I was the oldest. And at that time, the name of the game was, keeping the lights on and having a place to live. We grew up in a single wide trailer. And I say that not to be like we grew up in a single wide trailer. I say that in the sense that, we were just especially looking at it now, my father was probably making $27,000 a year, with a mentally handicapped brother and 2 other siblings. And it was a responsibility that I had to take on at an early age to grow up fast to be able to contribute to the overall household income. So then it was really about making sure that I didn't miss the responsibilities my father laid out with me, because, believe it or not, had I not done the job or followed up like I was supposed to, we may not have lights that day or water that day. And, it was funny. I think as a teenager, I was very angry with my father for the longest time, because I'd always be like, I don't understand why, and why don't you do more, and why don't you be more? And, I think you go through that stage of anger as a young man. And then looking back on it, I'm extremely grateful for all the things that happened, having that responsibility role, because I think it made me a heck of a lot better father, a leader in general. I think there is a couple of downsides, to it, but ultimately, I think the main thing is probably just some simple principle, as my dad used to always say, we're burning daylight. So, I was always up super early, knocking things out. And what was funny is I don't think it was because they don't accomplish anything great, like you're reading all of your books. It was really just that, in Florida, it'd be 150 degrees before 10 o'clock in the morning in the humidity. So if we were out building fence, in a swamp somewhere, we had to get out there really, really fast, because by 11 o'clock, it'd be so hot, you'd be so dehydrated, you'd pass out. And my father and I used to build almost a mile of barbed wire fence a day. And, to most people, that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense of that being difficult, but, we had post hole diggers. And that's I hadn't talked about that in a long time now. I laughed at myself. And I was the guy that would dig the holes for the posts. And so all day long, I'd do like upright rows, as an exercise. And we'd build a mile as fast as we could before lunch. Because one, we had to get money, and two, and if we didn't, it'd be so hot, we wouldn't be able to do anything. So that burning daylight meant a multitude of things as life moved on later on.
Yeah, and it sounds like, that's not easy work, right? It doesn't matter who you are, digging holes, right? And then having to smash the fence post down into that it's not easy. So I definitely think you definitely learned a work ethic, right? Starting early at a young age, and then to have the responsibility as the oldest child, that in itself is a lot of responsibility, right? Because you're making sure that your siblings are taken care of and they're not doing something that's going to hurt them, so right. So you are acting as as a parent figure to other kids.
Yeah, absolutely. My dad went through his own set of struggles with the divorce, multiple times, and chasing his own little demons, and we all have them. And sometimes you want security of life, to know that you can come home after a hard day's work and have a support system there. If someone looks at you and says, "Hey, thanks for slaying some dragons, and I'm going to hook you up with a nice dinner and a nice meal and a nice evening, and then you're going to go back out there and do it again." But when you don't have that support, it makes it a little more difficult. So it seems like the grind is all day, every day. I think it's important for people to appreciate a partner that's at home, that's out there striving and playing their part. Like in the military, our support system is equally as important as our team on the ground accomplishing the mission. So yeah, it was again, there's different stages I think you go through in life. And, if you were to ask the 18-year-old, TShane, I would be, madder than hell about the situation. Looking back on it now, again, I'm extremely grateful for the amount of work, because it's allowed me to set world records. It's allowed me to beat people in the sales environment just out of the simplicity of outworking them. That's really just the key component. People will just quit, and attrition is amazing. And if you can just hold on and keep grinding, what is it to sit on the phone and make $300 in a day to potentially get someone on the phone, in comparison to stamping 200 fence posts in 120 degree weather when you're sweating to death and mosquitoes are tearing you up. So I'd much rather be in the office, to be honest with you.
That's it, man. And I'm a firm believer that trials, adversity, it really does build character, right? It builds tough skin. It builds things that, and you said it, if you haven't experienced those things, you're a lot more likely to quit versus keep going and persevering.
Yeah, I have this little saying I give in a lot of my speeches. We as humans purchase pleasure for our inability to endure pain. Pain is the best teacher. Once you appreciate pain and you appreciate struggle, and you see that it's actually the true sweetness of life, once you kind of get your head wrapped around that, I think it makes everything 10 times easier. I think that's really, truly the key to success. You read a book, what you're looking for is you read it because you wanted to hear about the initial part of the success. I think when a lot of people write books, they don't tell the true pain of it all. You look at people and, what do they say? 15 years to an overnight success, right? So, the pain is the part that I think you appreciate. Once you become an entrepreneur or you go through something in your life, it's kind of funny because I always tell people, you don't look back like in the Marine Corps. We'd go through all this tough stuff. And I say, do any of us remember talking about the times when it was easy? No one wants to read a book or watch a movie about everything that's easy. The kid that has it all, that has everything, people get angry with. We want to understand the struggles. We want to see the pain. We want to be able to relate and say, man, we're going through that same thing. And then hopefully there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But even for those of us that have had a certain level of success in our life, once we get to the part where it's like, yay, we're like, oh man, I want to go back to the fight again. I want to get back to the struggle. I want to start that business from the ground up. I want to push myself. So it does make a uniqueness to it all. And I think it's kind of weird, but once you appreciate that, it makes it better.
That's it. And, I remember being a young sales guy, right? I think I got my first job when I was 14, and it was, I grew up in Oregon. So it was an Oregonian newspaper, and me and my brother and our buddy Steve from down the street, we all got hired to with this distributor to go and knock on doors, right? And try to get people to sign up for the weekly paper, or the weekly and the daily and Sunday was like, that was the big commission, the big $6 commission, So, but that experience, I remember day one, I didn't sell a single thing, and I must have knocked on 100 doors. And it was one of those things where I could feel my attitude draining out of my body, right? Like, I'm super excited for the first 10, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, you're bothering me. I'm trying to eat dinner. You woke up my baby. All these literally actual doors slammed in my face. And so I remember sitting on the curb, and I was like, this is the worst job ever. I never want to do sales. My brother and the buddy are high-fiving each other because they got some sales. And I'm just like, I am all in my feelings, And I get back to the distributor's office to settle up. Of course, I was not excited to settle up. There was nothing to settle up.
Right.
So he asked me for my clipboard, and I was like, hey, here you go. And I kind of held it back. And he's like, what happened out there? And I said, well, apparently nobody buys the newspaper. No one reads it anymore. I don't know. And I was just my attitude was gone, right? And he said, listen, I don't know if you're going to understand this today, but hopefully one day this will make sense to you. And I was like, all right, whatever. I'm ready to go home. Just whatever. What are you going to tell me? And he said, the sale doesn't start until the customer says no. I was like, all right, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I remember just kind of storming out, and I didn't think I was going to go back for day two. Right. I really didn't, but there was free Burger King involved, right? We got a free meal out of this. So I was like, you know what? Even if I go back, I'll at least get some free Burger King out of this tomorrow. And I went back, and I remember getting sales, and I remember having this shift in my mindset that, you know what? If I go out and I'm, expecting everybody to sign up, right? That's not a good expectation. So maybe if I shift it a little bit and I say, you know what, why don't I go out and look for the no's? Literally try to go find them. And every yes that I get is a bonus. And when you make that shift, right, that mindset shift, it's super easy to hear them after a while.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it's expectation. Expectation is the biggest monster to failure. You go into it because I always feel like I'm a big movie person. I love movies, and I think it's interesting with movies. I think the movie industry truly failed when it started doing behind scenes, DVDs, cuts. They were trying to find extras, something to upsell the product, to say, okay, well, let's hear the magic behind it. And I think right then they really killed the industry because, the whole idea behind the movie is to escape the realities, or at least to have a vision of, the stars of, beyond it all, and how we can reach it. And that's it's built by design. It's like a book. It's something to read. It's something to engage, to say, man, and that's what allows us to push further and further and further. And when they started to do that, they started to pull the curtains back, and we realized that Oz wasn't real. Then we started questioning everything. We started questioning ourselves and our ability. But before that all happened, it's like, man, I can be Rambo, or oh wow, I can kill aliens, or there's all these cool things that you want to be and accomplish. But once they started to do that, and everybody wants to know how and why, and people got weak and thought they can make an extra buck by revealing that, now people, their expectation of stuff is, well, it's not really going to happen, so why do I care? Well, it's not really going to happen, why does it care? And it pulls back the curtains. And I think that was a bad thing to do. I think we should all have that. That's why I think when you have children, I think it makes you become a better salesperson and entrepreneur, not because you have to pay the bills, but because you get to see through their eyes that they still believe that little elf is out there kicking people's butts every day on Christmas, that Santa Claus is getting ready to come right down and visit them. And it allows you to say, man, look at what they can accomplish and do with that positive attitude every day. I mean, I don't think, I'm sure people have some kids that are like that. My daughter wakes up every day and she's just super excited. She's just an excited kid and looking forward to just the littlest things. And, when I talk to sales guys, I'm like, man, you need to put that into perspective, because I think your expectations are set all wrong for it.
Absolutely. So let's jump back. So worked with the family farm, did that until, was it until 18, or was it shortly after that? And what was your next move?
Marine Corps. I signed up for the Marine Corps when I was 17. I had to have my stepmother, I think at the time, and my father signed because I was too young. I was beelining out. I was doing pretty good in football. I was playing high school football, but not anything that I thought I was going to go anywhere with it. I think I got hurt my senior year briefly at my ankle, and I was scared I wasn't going to make it into the Marine Corps to get out. So I think I quit mid-season to focus on making sure that I was going to get to the Marine Corps. But yeah, that was my next option, was sign up for the Marines, get on the bus, and get the hell out of town.
Okay. So join the Marines. So where was your first stop? Where did you go to boot camp?
Yeah, so I went to Parris Island, where real Marines are made. Other Marines will get that joke, but I went to Parris Island. I was overly ecstatic. I was very, very happy about my decision to go in the Marine Corps. When I got there, it was everything that I had hoped and wished and dreamed for the first 14 weeks of boot camp. I wrote home. I was excited. Other kids were crying and they missed their girlfriends and they wanted to go back home. And I was very happy. I did not want to go back to working with my father and doing all that stuff. So, the Marine Corps boot camp for me was an easy ride. It was not anything that I felt that was overly challenging that I wasn't already experiencing. And the fact of being able to grow and see something different and be more and get out of this town and experience, I was forever grateful. And the great thing about the Marine Corps is the Marine Corps doesn't give you anything. It gives you an opportunity to earn something. So it was great to earn that title as United States Marine. And I was top of my class, which was great. I was honor grad. So I was meritoriously promoted 3 times before we even made it to the fleet. So on average, the rank that I'd made in the 21 weeks of being in the Corps usually takes about 2 years to accomplish. So I was able to do it in a very short time because of that enthusiasm and that leadership responsibility. So again, at the time I was very upset with my father and all these issues. However, it played in a role to allow my success to be even greater because of it.
Oh man, I'm just thinking about, what you went through up into 17, 18. And you're right. That literally laid the foundation, and it gave you a different lens to look through in boot camp, because like you said, there's people crying, there's kids upset, and you're like, I don't want to be back there. I just did that for my entire life. I'm excited to get away and to do something different. And so I think that, having to do that, because it was about do we want electricity? Do we want to eat? When it comes down to that, everything else is super easy, right? Because that is real.
Man, I'll tell you stories about how I grew up that you wouldn't even believe. I talk about it in my first book that I wrote, and just a few of the stories. But to give you an example, we lived right on the Peace River in Florida, and we were probably about a mile away from that river. And we lived, Florida's swampland. A lot of Army engineers come in and they build up that ground. But flood companies make a killing off of it because it's just everywhere you're going to go, there's going to be rain somewhere. It's going to be holding up somewhere. So, when you grow up in the swampland, there's an area in our house where between there and the river is what we call a slough. So think of it like a, I don't know, I guess maybe like a swamp is what I guess you would think of it traditionally. And what happens is if you've got a river and a little bit of a high plain, and then it drops down into a slough, and then you go over and you've got your property, our trailer had to be up on 36 inches of dirt mound, and then another 36 inches of block for swift mud in order for it to not be within floodplain. So when summer would come in Florida, every afternoon it rains 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And when you've got this river where the very top of the river, it's very, very small, and then it goes all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico, and there's just kind of like ridges on the outside of it. When that rain comes down hard and it's been dry for so long, that water doesn't have anywhere to go. It doesn't soak into the ground very fast. So what ends up happening is it'll come up, push out, and then it floods. So in our front yard, there were times when the water, I swear to God, I'd go to sleep at nighttime with it raining. I'd wake up the next day and there'd probably be 5 or 6 foot of water out in the yard. And when I say the yard, I mean, like, we lived on a 365 acre ranch in the back end of it. I mean, the whole front yard would be like if you were living on a house or a riverboat, and my father, worked on the other side of town, so they couldn't stay there when it started to flood. They had to leave and go live in town, and I had to stay and make sure the animals, because also too, believe it or not, people would ride around in airboats and other boats and come through these homes and steal stuff out of them, because there was nobody in them once it would flood. So each morning for high school, for my senior year, in order to get to school, I'd have to wake up in the morning, put all of my school clothes in a trash bag, tie the trash bag. I had a 40 caliber Astra A75 pistol that I used to carry with me, because you'd walk out sometimes on the front porch in the yard if there was a little bit, and there'd be a 8-10 foot alligator sitting out front. You'd have moccasins, snakes, like all kinds of stuff, swimming around the water. So I'd take that trash bag, I'd put all my clothes in it, I'd tie it up, I'd take the pistol, I'd jump in the water at about 5:30 in the morning, and I would swim literally out our front yard and all the way down the road. And I mean, it was probably an easy 100 yards. I mean, between getting from the house to the front yard and then swimming down the water at 5:30 in the morning to my truck that was parked down the end on the dry portion. And then sometimes you'd wake up, and even where I'd parked the truck the night before, there would always be water at the mid portion of my tire. So I'd have to back up and swim a little further. And that's how I'd get to school. I'd change in the back of the truck. I had weightlifting first thing in the morning, so I was able to work out and then shower and change and get all of my stuff together to accomplish the school. And then I was, future business leaders of America. So I worked after the president. I'd work after second period. So I'd go in there, change, and then I'd go work. And I worked at a canoe place. So I'd go work there all day long until probably about 5 or 6 o'clock. I'd come back, park the truck, put my stuff in trash bags, swim back to the house, get back up. And that was my day during high school. And that was just an example of what it was like. So, I mean, again, for me, when I got to the Marine Corps, I was like, man, food's already prepped. I'm not swimming in swamp infested snake and alligator water. I've got a nice bed. It's nothing crazy. I wake up in the morning, I do a little PT, I just do what they tell me to do. It's not that hard. Follow the orders. I mean, yeah, life was good. It was I've got so many crazy stories like that growing up in the backwoods. So great experience. But
yeah. And listen, you basically had to do a triathlon to get to school. So, getting to the Marine Corps, it was like, oh, really? We got to do some push up right now. I know it's a lot more strenuous than that, but you're right. It just built up that mental fortitude, but also I'm sure you had to have been in good shape, because everything you're doing has to be done with your strength, right? Yeah. From swimming to digging holes to all those things you have to do that. It's a lot of physical activity.
Yeah, and it wasn't, great thing about that is you can't just go to a McDonald's. You're not just going to go to a McDonald's or just going to go to a Burger King. I mean, those things weren't around. I mean, it wasn't even close. I mean, when you're a high school kid, it's not like you got a ton of money anyways. And back then we drove, V8, 78, 79 trucks, so it would burn gas the second you touch the gas pedal. So it's not like you ever had a full tank of gas, So if you had any money, you were putting it in the truck. You weren't spending it on junk food. So most of the time, we had to hunt for most of our food. We didn't have a ton of money. So that was actually one of our chores. One of my chores anyways, is that if I'd come home and the freezer wasn't full, I had to go out and hunt for it. So some days that'd be my chore. I'd go out and it'd be 5 o'clock in the afternoon and go in the freezer, and my dad call from work and say, hey, freezer's running low. You need to go out and get a deer or grab a hog or go do something. And that'd be a chore. That's what I'd go do.
That's awesome. Now, I've got one question from that story that you told us previously, and it is, did that canoe company give you a dang canoe?
Yeah.
Did they eventually give you one?
They eventually did.
I'm thinking about that. It's like, you're like, yeah, Bill, like, I'm swimming to get to my truck. And he's like, oh, that's cool. Or was it like, why are you swimming? We've got canoes. Let's hook you up with a canoe.
Yeah. So it's so again, that's actually a really good question. And I say that in the sense that, there are a lot of people were going through a lot of problems during that time. And you got to think also too, that a canoe company in a flooded river is not making any money. They're just trying to keep the lights on. That was a struggling business. They taught me a lot about entrepreneurship that later on I was able to utilize. And that's a whole other story. But, I didn't ask for things I couldn't pay for. So my father always taught me, if we're not going to be in debt to anybody. So unless we can work it off or do something. And again, that canoe company was 20 miles from our house, because you had to go into town and then drive on the other side of town to get to it. So to go to the owner who was struggling with finances and say, hey, can you take a van and drive those canoes all the way up to my house, and dump one for me without me having an opportunity to pay for it or to earn it, was something that we just didn't ask. We didn't ask for help. We take care of your own and make sure you've got your house squared away, and don't expect other people to bail you out of it. You're a grown ass man, so take care of your business.
Makes sense. I was just curious if they had, one day been like, listen, we appreciate you having to swim to get to work, right? Yeah. To get there. Yeah. So I didn't know if they had given you one. And
later on they did. Later on, I think we got to a point where we needed it for something for work. Sometimes canoers would get stuck, or I had a guy drown and die once. I'd have to kayak 15 miles upriver in order to save people sometimes. So, eventually it became kind of like a rescue tool, because the river ended up flooding and there was a lot of people stuck. Because I told you, when I say it happened overnight, it literally happened overnight. So you'd have people that were canoeing out in Fort Meade somewhere, starting off at 7 o'clock in the morning, and it would be great. Storm would come in, and it would rain and rain and rain. And these people are doing 2 and 3 night trips out camping, and then all of a sudden that water would just rise. And these are people that they're not familiar with the woods, they're not familiar with they're just trying to. Honestly, they're a bunch of UF, Florida State college kids out just drinking, partying, having a good time, and they're hammered. Next thing you know, they don't realize what's happened. They're stuck on the river. They got nobody to come get them. You can't just run up there and grab them. So I'd have to kayak or canoe up. So eventually, it became an asset, later on, that I could use for both ways.
That's awesome. All right. So in the Marines, so how long did you serve? Just
4 years. I served from 98 to 02.
Okay. And during that time, what would you say was the most impactful experience that you went through in that 4 years?
Oh God, there's a lot. Well, 9/11. 9/11 was a pretty big one. But I think shoot, man, there's a bunch. That was a weird time. I think the claim to fame for conversation is the fact that I hit a brick house at 45 miles an hour and was robbed by, gang members and left for dead. And then 9/11 happens next. And then, of course, all of the things that I experienced from leadership and accomplishment, and, all the stories that I could tell from my experience of what I've done, good and bad. But I think, 9/11 was a big part of that. But prior to that was my motorcycle accident, where I was targeted as an initiation by a specific gang in Southern California.
So what brought you there? What brought you to Southern California, I guess is be the first question.
Yeah. So I go to Parris Island. I actually started the Marine Corps to go to JAG. I wanted to go study law. Not really sure why I picked the Marine Corps for that. It was being naive. When you grow in a small town, you're associated by last name, which would be the equivalent to financial, stature, right? So, if your certain last name follows suit to this, then people kind of say, well, you'll end up this way. And if your last name's this, then, life's going to be a lot easier. So, and I think that's a lot of small towns. So, I ended up having the opportunity to join the Marines. I earned the title. I get in there, and I'm going through boot camp, and I become honor grad. I'm top of my class, and I'm sitting there, and the drill instructor says, hey, you should go to infantry. And I thought, yeah, why don't I be a hard ass and go to infantry? That sounds like a good idea. So I decided to go to infantry, joined School of Infantry in North Carolina, and then they put me in 29 Palms, Southern California, with 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines. So for anybody that listens to this that is a Marine or served in the military knows that the worst duty station in the world is 29 Palms. It's the Mojave Desert. It's in the middle of nowhere. Sucks. By far, everyone is like, oh, 29 Palms, 29 stumps. Like, that place sucks. And I'm like, yes. But it's crazy because when you come from where I come from and you go in and they say you're going to go to West Coast, I'm like, yes, Tupac, like, great, West Coast. West Coast rap was like the best ever. I loved it way more than I did East Coast rap. I enjoyed the whole idea of being able to go to this place. And So I head out to Southern California. They fly you into Palm Springs, and they do it at nighttime. So you come into Palm Springs, and I swear to God, I'll never forget it. I was like, I made the best decision of my life. I am a genius. Everyone else is going to college. I'm doing all these things. I'm heading to Southern California, SoCal, baby. Like, this is going to be great. I get into Palm Springs. Lights are big. It's great because, in the desert, there's nothing there. So a town full of lights looks like Vegas, and no matter where you go, So I get into Palm Springs. Palm Springs is amazing. It's I think at the time the cab was like a Mercedes, and I was just like, I love my life. So they get you there at nighttime. It's like, and then they take you up. It's like a 3-hour ride from Palm Springs to 29 Palms. And it just gets like, the lights get smaller and smaller and smaller, and it gets darker and darker. And then there's a whole new set of lights at nighttime, which is the base when you pull up to it. And again, it looks pretty cool at night. I mean, you're like, man, this is great. And I get into my barracks, I get situated. I wake up the next morning, I walk out the door, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And it's just pure desert, nothing. And in the very front of 29 Palms, they have retention ponds that are in the front, and it's really just, it smells horrible. You got to run around and PT it all the time. I mean, it is just devil's land. So that's how I ended up in SoCal per se.
So you grew up in swampland, and then you end up in the desert, right? You're like, man, what I wouldn't give for a flood right now. Just come on, come washing in.
Oh man, life is fun. Yeah. So I end up in the desert, but then ironically, the first time I see snow is in the desert. I mean, man, I swear life is just crazy. It's 120 degrees during the day, so I was used to the heat, but there was no humidity. This is why I love California weather. No humidity. You weren't sweating all the time, so I could deal with the heat. The heat wasn't a problem for me. But then at nighttime, that temperature would drop, and it'd be 20, 30 degrees, which again, I'm a Florida guy, so I'm not, used to it being cold. So my blood's a little thinner. And then I woke up one morning during one of our trainings during Christmas, and it's snowing. And I'm like, this place is hell. How did I even get here? It's snowing in the desert the first time I see snow. Crazy experience. And the day before, I have sweat stains all over my camis because, we're out running around in 120 degrees, dehydrated. So, good times, man. It's a very exciting time.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit. You brought up a story where you got in a motorcycle accident. So that happened while you were in California. So you were a Marine at the time, I'm assuming. So how did that all transpire? If we can just give some context to the audience.
Yeah. So I joined 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines in Infantry Division. We go to Okinawa for our first pump. We go out there. At that point, I've always wanted to be Battalion Recon. And of course, for those that don't know what it is, that's kind of like the Navy SEALs and the Marine Corps, which was the original Frogmen, which was actually before the Navy SEALs. So I wanted to be Recon. So we get to Okinawa. There's an opportunity to join 5th Force Recon. And so we take what was called the NDOC. So think of it like a tryout. You go through a week where they just, like a hell week where they just crush you and do everything. So, that was kind of a weird time where funding was limited to the military. So they said, well, hey, listen, 5th Force is probably going to dissipate, turn battalion, and then it's going to, you're just going to be stuck here in Okinawa doing Battalion Recon. And, there's a difference between battalion and force. I'm like, well, man, I don't want to be, Battalion Recon and be stuck over in Okinawa. If it is anything, I want to be force where I get more operational time. So I decided to go back with my unit 3-4 and join 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, Battalion Recon. And then I said I'll work my way up to force because those guys got all the cool ops. So I leave 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines. I make it into the NDOC. I go to Battalion Recon and part of their OJT program and start going through the process. We're going through combat dive. So all the operators are getting ready to go to scuba, pre-scuba, and we're training for pre-scuba. We're training for pre-scuba for them to go to combat dive, but all of us newbies had to go with them. So, we were training like crazy, hitting the pool, doing 1,000-meter fins, pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups, running 5 miles there, 5 miles back, just PT studs. I mean, it was just a time where we were just training like crazy. So we finally had a 72. So we had 3 days where we were able to get off. And, in the Marine Corps, if you can't get off the base and you're within your unit and you're a newbie, you're going to get hazed. I mean, no matter how you look at it, and not like the bad haze that went through that stage. I mean, just, it is what it is. You're going to get ripped. So it's part of the process. But I did not want to do that. So I had a motorcycle, and I had a buddy of mine lived up in Corona. And he was going through, they had just finished Scout Sniper. So he was in Scout Sniper. I was in Battalion Recon. We had like some free time. And he went up there and I was like, man, I'm going to head up to Corona and get the hell out of here for a weekend. So I got on my bike, I head out of the back of the base, I get everything ready to go. I always joke because, in the Marine Corps, you have to have, your government property. So you have to have your camis on, your helmet, and all this gear. Like, who wants to ride around in SoCal wearing all this gear? I mean, that's just not cool. So I get off the base, I switch out to Suns Out, Guns Out, and put everything in my pack. I got a tank top on, pretty boot, as we would say. And, I'm trying to pick up the girls. It is what it is, And so I get out of the back of the base. I'm riding down, going probably about 35, maybe 40 miles an hour down a lane. And if, down there, it's a little more hilly than it is, in Florida. So as I'm going down this hill, there's a car that's kind of like in front of me, goes into the left turning lane. I drive straight to go through the light, and they turn right and hit me at 40 miles an hour. So when they did, I kind of just ricocheted off the car, and I caught the corner of a brick house at 45 miles an hour across my chest. And when I did, it broke my entire chest plate. I mean, when I say broke it, it broke it, like it broke it in half. My collarbone was shattered. My right hand was shattered. My shoulder blade was broken. Then all of my ribs were broken in pieces, and they started to cut into my major organs. My kidney, my spleen, my liver was all cut and sliced. My lungs ended up taking 350-cent size whole pieces into them, punctured. My left bicep was lacerated. I started to bleed out. So I think your body holds about 6 pints of blood. I lost 4 pints during that. And then when I hit the ground, they got out of the car and started kicking me and robbing me and taking all of my stuff. And because of the gang and the area, nobody would help me. So once they left me, I put my right hand over my left bicep and started to walk 2 blocks to luckily I found a fire station, or I guess I just stumbled upon a fire station. It was a little blurry about really, I don't think it was strategic. It just happened to happen. So I get there, and there happened to be a doctor on site. They brought in a helicopter. They put me in the helicopter. At that point, I'm drowning in my own fluid, so I'm taking 1 full breath every minute in order just to live. I'm bleeding out all over the place. I'm dehydrated. Water is the only thing in the world I could ever have that I wanted, cold water. And then I flatline out the first time. And I die the first time. And of course, you got to remember, my entire chest plate's broken. So they can't like CPR me. They can't really do anything. They have to hit the paddles to kind of bring me back. So I come back the first time. They get me to the hospital. We land down in the hospital, and then I flatline out the second time. And the second time I was dead for quite a while. They were trying to work on me pretty hard to bring me back at that point. I came back the second time. They get me into the hospital, get me all situated, start to put the tubes into me, get me all squared away, and then I die the third time. That's the kind of one where everyone's like, "Hey, did you see God, or what was that experience like, and what did you go through?" And that was the time where I went through that experience. And then, I was 3 months into the hospital. I was in critical care, ICU. They couldn't move me. They couldn't do any surgeries. They couldn't do anything because if they put me under, my lungs wouldn't support it. So I'd just die again. And I ended up 6 months, I think, in total rehab. The Marine Corps did not give me any rehab. They kind of just threw me in the barracks and forgot about me for a little bit. And then I rehabbed myself, got back in the pool, started training again. I mean, they really just couldn't do much with me. In the unit, what was going on was too hard and too fast to really kind of pay attention to someone like that. So I just got back into it. And then I think maybe about 9 months later, maybe 10 months later, I was fully operational. I was running a 300 PFT, 3 miles in under 18 minutes, doing 20 pull-ups again, and then back doing my crunches. And then 9/11 happened.
Wow, man. So that's ridiculously incredible, because I think most people listening probably have not died once, right? I mean, I'm going to say that that's safe to say. And, listen, there might be someone in the audience that has died maybe once and came back, but right. I mean, 3 times?
Yeah.
So, if you're listening and you want to hear a story of someone that is resilient, this is definitely the episode to listen to. So what was the first thing you remember hearing from the doctors when you actually eventually came to? Because they had to have been like sitting on this for a while, like, like, I really want to talk to this guy and tell him that like he literally died 3 times. So I'm so curious, what was the first conversation where you knew that actually happened?
I will tell you, I was crazy conscious of everything. I mean, I can remember, matter of fact, I can remember it so much. I've told this story so many times. Every time I can still feel the scars that I have. I have 3 major scars on my body from when they had to cut me open and run tubes into my chest while I was in the hospital, while I was going through my ribs in order to get the fluid out. And I mean, I remember everything. I mean, I remember hitting the wall, I remember being robbed, I remember being kicked, I remember them cutting me open. I mean, I don't think there was very few times where I can't remember something that happened. So I was very conscious of the whole situation. The doctor comes down to me and, of course, the typical, like, I mean, the obvious, you're lucky to be alive, right? And then he said to me, you've endured more pain than most people will ever experience in their entire life. He's like, and the fact that you've lived through it says something. He's like, so you need to be very conscious of that. And of course, at 20, 21 years old, I wasn't really paying attention very much. I was just kind of like, man, I'm ready to get back at it again. Not until later on in life did that message really resonate with me and allow me to make some shifts on some stuff. But yeah, I was very conscious of it, quite a bit of things. I remember dying, when I did die the 3rd time, I came out of my body, I saw everything. I had a discussion with God, believe it or not, and not in a physical being sort of way, just more of a subconscious conversation about choices, about, hey, if you don't want to feel any more pain and you want to give up, it's okay. Like everything's all right, but if you want to fight, there's going to be a lot of pain, but here's the benefits to that. I mean, it was truly a very clear, I mean, I can remember it, a very clear conversation about what's happening. And not until my last run across America, the last 4th quarter, that I've ever met anybody else that's died. And it was funny when we were sharing our stories, it was with a lady, she was 75, she had a heart attack and died, and they brought her back. Our stories mimicked almost identical. So it was crazy to know, it was comforting, but at the same time, it was really, I've never talked about it very much as far as like that with other people that have experienced it. But yeah, I guess when the doctor came in and said, hey, you're lucky to be alive, you died 3 times.
Listen, I think, you have, that is probably the most pivotal moment anyone can have, right? If you're speaking to God and he is basically saying you've got 2 choices, either one is good, it's up to you. And the fact that in that moment you decided to go into the hard work, right? To go through the pain and be able to share this story with others. I mean, that's your calling, right? I mean, that is there is a higher purpose, and your journey was not over yet.
I tell a lot of people, for those of you listening to this podcast, and man, wow, and I think a lot of people get caught up on the fact that I was resilient to live. I think the message more here is that life is tough, but just so you know, from someone who's been there, I have an unfair advantage to the common person. That's why people always say, what's your success and what can you do and how do you keep going? And it's like, well, I mean, why would I not? I mean, the alternative is that everything is going to be okay. I mean, it's kind of a cheat code, no matter what I go through and no matter what happens at the end, everything's all right. So it gives me an unfair advantage to life. And I tell people all the time, like, do something out of your comfort zone, do something difficult, do something hard. Everything's going to be all right, man. Don't worry about the virus. Don't worry about the world falling apart. Don't worry about all these problems and issues you think are problems and issues, between your drama with your mama and everything that's going on. Like, just be you and know that he's got us. He or she's got us. Whatever it is, got us. It's going to be cool. Like, life will be fine. Like, I've been there way too many times, and I've stepped on that side, and it is, how I explain it? I think it's probably the closest form of meditation you can ever experience. Like, in life, we have so much noise coming at us, right? Between the phone dinging and the text messages and the flashing lights and the things going on and the kids screaming and the partners and the business and the dings and the bells and everything. And we never get that full form of complete silence, ever. Very few of us. So I think people that try to really focus on that Zen meditation are the ones that kind of really ever kind of reach it. But when you die, it is probably the most euphoric feeling in the world because it is complete silence. It is the only time where you are truly with just you. There is no other noise. There is no other flashing light, no other ding, nothing. It is the opportunity to experience just you in the purest form. As deep and as weird as that sounds, it is truly just the epitome of complete silence, which we don't get to experience, if at all, as humans, because our brains are just filled with so much stuff coming at us 24/7. And once you've experienced that utopia of complete silence, you get to really know who you are. And for those of you that are going through all of that stuff out there and everything else, man, for someone that has been there, like, it'll be all right. So just take the risk, make it happen, push, do something you've never done before, take a risk, fall on your face all the time. It's all right, because we're all going to hit it. And when we do, just know you'll be able to rest. It'll be all good.
No, I definitely love that advice. And, you said something a little bit earlier that it really resonated with me. And again, I've never died, right? Not not even once, but I have had 3 near-death experiences, or experiences that I would say, could have went in different directions, right? And so, like, in 4th grade, I got stung by 53 bees. Like, if I was allergic to bees, I wouldn't be telling that story, right? That was tough to experience. In 7th grade, I got beat up by cops. I was falsely arrested. They thought I was a Hispanic runaway. I'm not even Hispanic, but I do look the part. And, if I would have fought back, I could have been shot. So you go through those things, and then you think about, like, how you deal with certain things. And so I think you hit it on the head. Dealing with adversity, it definitely is a game changer, because it gives you experiences and perspective that other people have not been through, right? So it adds to that level. And I think the last one for me at 19, we got in a car accident going about 70 and flipped 3 times, and had to have 52 staples and laser surgery and relearn how to walk. And, so those 3 things for me, I looked at them and they're foundational to the perspective on life that I have, So I think when you said that earlier, I was like, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. I think of why I'm so optimistic a lot of the times, and why I don't, like some people, look at certain situations and I'm just super easy to adapt to and be like, oh, it's all good. It'll be all good.
I mean, I speak to quite a few troubled teens, and I go in and go, you're the lucky ones. And it's always funny to watch their face, because they're so surprised. I'm like, the rich, pretentious kid that doesn't have anything with the decent parents has no story. They have no adversity. They have no scars. They have no strength. They have nothing. I mean, to be normal in a life without any agony or pain is, that's a major disadvantage. I mean, I think those that there was a Facebook video, I want to say maybe 2 years ago, that was out, and it was interesting. It was this, like, typical video where it shows, these privileged kids take 2 steps forward if they're, they get this for free, and then another 2 steps forward if their parents help them with this, and another 2 steps forward. And then they told the coach told them to turn around, and there was a bunch of kids in the far back, and it was explaining that those kids in the back are the ones that, that have it the worst, and they're not going to be able to do this, and yada yada. And I was kind of laughing to myself, and I was kind of looking at that video, and I'm going, no, because that kid in the back is going to run faster to catch up with that kid in the front. And a muscle's not going to grow unless it's tore down and built more. And he's going to become stronger and stronger and stronger. And then at the end of the day, everybody's going to watch his story because of the struggle he went through to build to get there is faster, where the other person's never going to have that advantage. Their life as a muscle will atrophy, and they won't build and grow, and they won't be more. I would be looking at the people in the front saying, you need to go all the way to the back and learn to strive to run faster and be stronger, because that's what's going to give you the competitive advantage over everyone else.
No, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And so I want to find out, like, even up until this point, for everybody that's listening, TShane has obviously blazed his own trail. I mean, that is apparent. But I want to give the audience some context. So after the Marines, you serve 4 years, you experience death 3 times, you go through 9/11, and what was the next step? So when was your first dipping your toe, if you will, into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think on a corporate platform, I started it younger, with the canoe company, and I was kind of building that platform, and I ended up having, these these canoers would travel midway in a 3-day trip and get stuck, and they'd have no stores, and they'd always look for beer. We can't find beer. And I remember my dad used to have, I think Michelob Ultra or Bud Light used to come out with these little minis, these little teeny beers. And if you didn't glance at them at first, you'd grab the wrong ones, not realizing they were regular ones. So my dad sometimes would mess up and be like, man, I bought these little beers. You'd come home after work and have a cold beer every once in a while, and start a fire. And I remember canoers were coming down, and I was sitting there, and the canoe was like, man, I would pay $50 to have a six pack of beer right now. And I was like, and in my head, I was thinking to myself, $50, dang, we probably paid $7 for that. $50. I'm like, I think we got some at the house. And I was like, does it matter what kind? And he's like, just as long as they're cold, I don't care. So I ran probably 1.5 miles as fast as I could all the way back to the house. I grabbed those little minis, I bring them all the way back, and the guy gave me $50 for it. And I remember coming back, and I gave my dad like $20. I was like, Dad, these guys paid $20 for this 6-pack of beer. And, so I was like, I gave it to you. It was like a $13, in profit. It was $43 in profit, but I had kept the $30. I think he found it later or something and was like, how are you making all this money? And I was like, oh, well, what had happened was, and we ended up turning it into like parking cars, and it was helping pay the rent. But I get out of the Marine Corps, and I speak to a lot. I just did a tour. I spoke to the United States Navy and the Army and the Marine Corps, and everybody wants me to talk about transition. When you get out of the Marine Corps and military, it's so hard to transition for those veterans out there, and it's just so difficult. And I call bullshit on that. It's not. I don't understand how it's difficult. We are literally the tip of the spear of the country, right? We are the largest dominating country in the world. Everybody wants to be and come to be us. We have the most effective and killer military. We're taught the leadership values that are instilled in us for 277 years that have done nothing but just win battles, right? I mean, it's just the best corporate leadership platform in existence. So I'm going to get out and I'm going to go, wow, I don't know what to do now. Like that's bullshit. That's not what the Marine Corps taught me. I don't know about the other branches, but I know for damn sure that the Marine Corps taught me to effectively get out and execute accordingly. And if I didn't have the Marine Corps, my father was pretty simple: get a job. You got to pay bills. That's how it works. I don't go, well, I really don't know what I want to do, so I'm just going to sit around for a couple of years and just kind of maybe figure it out. Like, I know what I want to do. I don't want to be stuck here with 100 pounds running every day. I want to go get a job so I can make some money and have my own freedom. I don't want to be around 10,000 dudes every day. It's like, I want to go out and do more and be more. And the Marine Corps taught me from a leadership point to do that. So I didn't have like a transition problem. I was lost in life. I was like, get a job. Cool. So I started selling gym memberships. I was like, I'll just start sales. And that was a great platform to learn from, overcoming objections and gym membership sales. And back then you have to sell like year packages, and you have closeout, it'd be like 100-hour weeks and all kinds of stuff. So I learned a lot about overcoming objections. And then I wasn't making very much money. I was making like $900 draw. And by the time you'd sell the memberships, you'd walk away with like $1,200. But the hours didn't bother me. I was already doing it. The money honestly was fine because I wasn't making much of the Marine Corps. So I was all right. And my girlfriend was like, at the time, she's like, you need to get a real job. Selling gym memberships is not a real job. She was like a graphic designer for E-Trade, I think. And I was like, okay, cool, real job. All right, got it. So back then you used to have to fax all of your resumes. So I'd fax all my resumes over to a bunch of different companies, and it came down to Boston Market and AmeriQuest Mortgage. And I was like, and honestly, I had no clue between the difference. I knew one sold chicken and the other one did something with finance. I don't know. So I know I didn't have a college degree. I tried college for a day, and that just did not pan out for me any more than it did in high school. So I got interviewed by both. I had my account was negative, like $188. I had no money. I had to have a suit prepared. So back then you could get on like AOL, and we had like a Mac computer, one of the big ones. It was like a big CRT, cathode ray tube type screen. And I remember like, the download, like you'd click it and go show the picture, and the picture would load, So I was like trying to get my tie together and do everything to get prepped. And good thing about the Marine Corps is I was allowed to put my uniform on very, very well. I knew how to make something out of nothing and make it look really good. So I was broke as a joke. I go in an interview with both of the jobs. I do my typical gym sales close, go through all the objections. I get back and Boston Market comes to me and says, man, we'd love to hire you to be a manager here to sell chicken. We're going to pay you $24,000, I think it was. You get to wear a tie, you come in. And I'll be honest with you, my father made barely any money. I didn't have a college education. I thought that was pretty good. You know, I was like, cool. AmeriQuest Mortgage calls me and the lady says, it was a great interview, amazing interview. And she says, she goes, why do you think we should hire you? And I said, well, you know, by the time I was 18, I've accomplished more than most people will their whole entire life. I've been on the top of Mount Fuji. I've died 3 times. I've become the best of one of the most elite fighting forces in the world. And I'm like, and I'm going to bring that same type of tenacity and leadership to your company. And the lady was like, dang, you know, we don't have people say stuff like that, you know, at my age, you know? So I went in for the interview. It's so funny talking about this because it is interesting considering right now in this industry, but I go into the office. It's in Clearwater, Florida. You know, it's this amazing office. There's this little guy behind the front desk. He comes to me, starts to interview me. He's asking me sales questions, overcoming objections. And thank God I had been doing gym sales because I was able to overcome them pretty well. And he goes, you know, he goes, I think we want to hire you. And I said, okay. And at the time, I had learned this tactic. It was kind of funny. I brought a Windex bottle with me everywhere I went to my interviews. And I had the Windex bottle, and I'd always set it on the right-hand part of the desk when I would do the interview. And they would always ask. It was a tee-up, right? Like I would save a bunch of time. It was always a tee-up for the sell. So he would look at me, and he was like, you know, we finished the interview. We'll get close to finishing the interview, and he says, what's the Windex bottle? No, I said, I brought that from my desk. Right? I just totally assumed the close. And he was like, all right, this guy rocks. Like we got to hire you. So it was really, you know, I've used that a couple different times. I loved it. And so anyways, we get to the end and I go, hey, by the way, what's the pay? And he says, he goes, well, you get a small salary, 24,000 in commission. And I know to some of you like listening, it just may sound common, but I had no clue what commission was. I didn't know that you can make money above and beyond for selling a product. That's how naive I was to the world. Like I didn't know. I just thought just like Marine Corps, I get my paycheck every month. So he calls the top guy in and they highlighted a couple of things. He takes the pay stub, he turns it over to me and puts it in front of me. And the highlighted section said like $63,000 or something. And I started laughing because I said, you know, being a Marine, we don't do math very well. I just look at that and it looks like grid coordinates to me. So can you tell me what that actually means? And he goes, yeah, he made $63,000. And I was like, oh my God, in a year, he made $63,000 by just getting on the phones. I was like, this is the best job in the world. And he goes, no, that was last month. And I was like, you telling me that this guy made $63,000 in a month on the phones in the air conditioning? He's like, yes. And I'm like, I don't even care if this is illegal at this point. Like, I just went in. Like, what do I got to do? You know, I was like, I could, you know, I mean, it was like, it was just beyond me that there was an opportunity. And I usually say this when I give this in a speech. I always say, right then, right that second is when I really understood why I fought for this country. Because this company was willing to pay me what I thought I was worth. Like the second they gave me a salary, they told me what they thought I was worth. You're worth this $2,000 a month. But the second I understood commission in my brain, I said, this company is willing to pay me what I think I'm worth. And it was just a weird paradigm shift for me. I mean, I was like enamored by the fact that we live in this country that I could just go pick up a phone and make $1 million in a year. Like I was just blew my mind. And I remember going back to the house and I was like, I was so broke. I was like, oh my, you know, in your brain, you start thinking to yourself, like, what do I deserve this? Can this happen? It doesn't make any sense. And then I think just that Marine Corps mentality kicked in for me. Like, I was like, okay, I'm going to beat that guy. What do I got to do? So I started the job and I went in, and I think the next month I made $68,000 in about 60 days after training and doing that. And then I made 7 figures in that year as a 23-year-old kid that didn't know anything about mortgages. And next thing you know, like I was just crushing it. And it was an amazing opportunity, an amazing thing for me to to do. And I was so broke when I got my first check. I couldn't put it in the bank because the bank had a hold on my account. They wouldn't let me get any of the money. And I didn't know that you could take the check to the bank that wrote it and just pay $5 and get the cash. So I took it to a check cash place, and I paid like 18% on $68,000, which was just stupid. But I didn't care. I walked away with all this money. I was like, I go into the bank with cash, and they're like, Mr. Johnson, versus like, oh, your account's negative in front of everybody. And they're like, come back to this room. And they give you little waters and little snacks, and they count it. It was just a craziest experience, man. It was life-changing for me. And again, it allowed me the opportunity to do quite a few things. So that was my first real world experience with entrepreneurship / sales, or overpaid salesperson is probably what it was at the time.
Sure. And so after that, when did you start, speaking, doing speaking engagements and, getting into the other business ventures? When did you write your first book? When did all that start to come to fruition? Yeah,
that was later on. So the mortgage industry during that time boomed pretty well. I opened up my first company when I was 26, my own independent company. I learned the difference between being a very high paid salesperson and a business owner at that time. And the differences between the two. 2008 recession happened, which was a great time to be in the mortgage business. It was definitely not a great time to be in the mortgage business. And then I lost my company, lost everything. I ended up homeless for about 2 years. I'd always been a speaker, but I never actually went out and did it because I didn't feel like I had enough value to provide to people at that time in order for it to be worth something, like a Zig Ziglar or a Les Brown or something. I didn't have much of what I considered an accomplishment because I was surrounded by all these people that were doing the same, if not better than me. So I didn't really look at it to the general public like I was killing it. And then I ended up on the streets for about 2 years. I mean, I spent all my money taking care of other people and focusing on trying to help my father through his situations, and my sister became a drug addict, and I ended up taking care of my nephew, and she ended up her husband committed suicide, and it was just an array of wonderful things that happened throughout life that allowed me the opportunity to overcome them and do more. So fast forward 2 years after being homeless, I built 3 companies, did over $40 million a year out of sales out of a Dunkin' Donuts, free Wi-Fi in the back of my car. And I go through that. I build another mortgage company, yada, 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 build a couple other companies. They start doing well. Have my daughter, fast forward, start working on the veteran issues, helping some veterans. So I start running across America, raising awareness for that, setting some world records. Then I wrote my first book after my first run across the country, 3,000 miles for your why, Hike Across America. Talks a little bit about the stories we discussed today. And and that's kind of how it got there. And then 4 books later, and another successful startup in the last year and a half, and still continuing to have adversities like we all do, but we just keep pushing forward.
That is awesome, man. Well, I can definitely tell you, for the audience that's listening, this has been super valuable, right? Hearing your journey, right? Because it's definitely been a journey for sure. And so if folks that are listening, they're saying, wow, TShane's got some tenacity that I would like injected into my life. How can they reach you? What's the best place to get in touch with you if maybe they want to bring you on for like a corporate speaking engagement, or maybe they want help with sales, to build up that, perseverance and mindset that you've been able to develop over your lifetime. So where are the best places to reach you? Yeah, so
it's pretty standard. You can visit our website, TShaneInspires.com. All of my social media handles are TShane Johnson. You can text me, 704-574-6611. If that's easier, just shoot me a call, shoot me a text as well. And of course, my email is info@tshanejohnson.com.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time to hang and to tell everyone how you have blazed your own trail. And I'll definitely be following your journey, and congrats on all of your success, and really, congrats on persevering, because I think for me, that's the biggest takeaway, is that it doesn't matter what life throws at you. There's definitely someone out there that has gone through something worse, right? And so when you can really get that perspective, I think a lot of people that are listening, it'll really help them make some shifts.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the world's an absolutely amazing and beautiful place, and it is for sure. And you're in the presence and you're in the now. And, I can't tell something that relates to everyone, but I can talk to you as a parent. If you ever want to see perfection in its wholest and most beautiful form, just look at your son or daughter. I mean, that really truly is the epitome of a perfection of life, and they view it through their vision as an amazing thing. Don't ever rob them of that. Take the time to learn from them. They're the best teachers. We think we know it all, but it is truly the young children that give us a way better vision on how life is.
I definitely agree with you there, man. Being a father of four, I learn my lessons every day, right? I learned that I am not smarter than the fifth grader sometimes.
That's for sure.
So, hey, listen, man, I appreciate you coming on the Blaze Your Own Trail podcast, and I hope you have an amazing weekend, and I hope you and your family stay safe, right, in the midst of everything that's happening with COVID-19. So, appreciate you coming on, my friend.
My pleasure. Thanks, brother.
Wow, what an amazing story and journey, and all of the adversity that TShane has gone through. So incredible. Make sure you connect with him. All of his info will be down in the show notes. And make sure also, if you're not subscribed yet, that you subscribe to the show and tell your friends about it. We want to add as much value as we can to the world. So please share it, please subscribe, and please rate it and review it on iTunes if you haven't already. Thank you so much for all of the support, and I will talk to you in the next episode.